Welcome to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show, empowering your real estate investing with techniques, opportunities, and information, minus the BS and sales pitches. Now, please welcome the host of the Investor Empowerment Series, Joe Mueller, from the Tough as Nails Investment Syndicate, Joe Mueller.
Hey, you're listening to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. This is episode number 66. Ghetto Deal or No Deal? All right, so today I want to talk a little bit about buying properties that are valued at less than $30,000. More particularly, buying properties in subpar markets, subpar neighborhoods, areas where you probably wouldn't want to walk around at night with your kid in a stroller type situations, or a bag full of money on your hip. Unless maybe there's a gun on the other hip, if you know what I mean. There's a lot of hype going on, or there always has been, I should say, on Bigger Pockets about investing in these lower priced neighborhoods and the lower income type neighborhoods. Well, I don't know the right answer. I've done it. I've done both. I've done D quality neighborhoods. I've done B plus and A quality neighborhoods. I've had results from both, good and bad. But today we're going to talk about an actual ghetto deal or no deal, and I want to hear from you on what you think about it. We get a lot of emails, text messages to me, responses. I appreciate the people that are giving some feedback on iTunes and Stitcher and giving some reviews, and the people that are reaching out to me after we do podcasts asking questions. It just helps me continue to grow what I'm doing here and justifies the time that I spend working on the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. So I want to hear your opinion on this. We're going to go through an actual deal that I've got experience with, something I bought back in 2008. Yep, right? Post-crashy. It was like late 2008, early 2009. So run some real numbers on a property that I purchased in the sub $30,000 category in a shitty neighborhood, which I probably would not go to and walk around anyway. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but you know, if you're going to be investing, you got to be careful what you're buying. If you're going to be taking on property management, if you think that your problems are going to be solved by hiring a property manager because you will never need to go to these crappy areas, think again. There's a lot of times where there's crappy properties, there's crappy property managers. It is management intensive to keep these properties, or make them stable and keep them stabilized with paying tenants in place. And I'm sure there's people out there listening to this podcast that are like, no way, man, I have a great experience doing this. I met an investor a couple years back who invested in a part of Indiana where he would typically buy properties from $10,000 to $20,000 a piece, put $10,000 to $20,000 into them, cheap carpet, cheap fixtures, whatever, wham bam, slap a coat of white paint on the walls, keep it simple, stupid, easy, which I think is cool. And they'd be worth somewhere between 40 to 50 when he was done, maybe 60,000. He was collecting $700 to $1,000 a month in rent. He had great success. I mean, he built a multi-million-dollar portfolio, like 300 houses in this area. I ain't saying it's impossible. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. But this is your opportunity to help discuss with me on your feelings about that type of situation, because I know it's controversial. I know there's stuff on BP, Bigger Pockets, that talks about it, and I know there's other investors I've spoken to that, you know, don't necessarily believe it's a good idea, and those that think it's a great idea. That's why it's on the podcast today. So, episode number 66, the Investor Empowerment Series radio show, Ghetto Deal or No Deal. Let's bear in mind when we're talking about these types of numbers, this is not supposed to represent a city or an area or a demographic, for one. Number two, it's not supposed to represent that in every city that there's going to be a problem with buying houses for $30,000. I know one of my buddies, Steven Van Kallenberg, out of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. He buys nice houses for $30,000 in decent areas that are, you know, B- or C+ areas. It just depends on where you're at. If you want to learn more about neighborhood classification, A, B, C, and D, A being the best, D being the worst, I'm thinking about maybe episode number 67, we should cover that. But for now, Google it, go on Bigger Pockets. There's lots of descriptions on how to classify your property and why. And, you know, an A-type property is going to be like expressway access, good neighborhoods, low crime or no crime, in a gated community, for example, walking distance to retail and medical access, doctors, hospitals, police and fire fully staffed and good funding, a good tax base, people moving into the community, not out of the community or the city. Stuff like that's going to be an A, as opposed to like a D class property, which is going to be, you walk down the street and there's some burnout buildings that are boarded up and maybe a couple vacant lots on either side of the property because they got knocked down for disrepair and the city came in and just bulldozed them. Detroit and Chicago, by the way. So not uncommon in the metro areas that are highly populated at all. And then the B and the C are going to be everywhere in between. I mean, you can kind of figure it out on your own. Just be cautious if you're working with anybody and you're buying property through a broker or maybe a turnkey investor or out-of-state type situation where you actually don't know that area that well. You need to dig in deep because you might not want to be owning in a D neighborhood. I'm just saying. But let's get into the meat of this deal. This is a property I purchased in that same subpar range in a D neighborhood, mainly because I already had an apartment building within a half a mile or a mile or so of this particular property, and it was a good deal, so I jumped on it because I'm like, hey, I already got property management. I already got the people in place. I already got it going on. Why not just add another unit / single family to my portfolio in this particular area? That was my justification. And we're going to run the numbers and see what you guys think. So let's get into it. I bought this property in 2008 for $12,000. Yep, that's right, $12,000. It needed work because I don't know what you can buy in your neighborhood for 12 grand, but I can tell you in my neighborhoods, 12 grand ain't getting you much. I mean, lucky in this particular situation, I bought it through auction, so it was already kind of a good opportunity. It was like post crash. So like right when the getting was good type situation. But as we run through the numbers, you'll see I did not get much more for it when I sold it than what I bought it for, which is another problem with buying in these types of neighborhoods is there's pretty much no appreciation, maybe even negative appreciation or depreciation, I should say. So I put about $20,000 worth of work into this property. It was a brick single family, 1 story with a basement and a detached 2-car frame garage. Put a roof on it, put some windows in, updated the kitchen, updated the bath, painted the basement, which was unfinished, put a new furnace in. I don't even know if it had air conditioning, so can't speak to that. But I spent about $20,000 on the rehab from my recollection. No, it's about $20K when I bought it and fixed it up. Had a contractor down there that GC'd it, so they took a cut of that, of course. They're 10, 15, 20%, whatever it was. And I got it rented out through my property manager. So let's run some numbers. What do you get in rent for a $12,000 house? Well, in the Chicago area, you can get what I got, which is $1,100 a month, pretty consistently for the course of the 9 years that I own this property. Now, I'm going to run some numbers. I'm going to give you real data, and this is something you should consider, especially if you're going to buy in that type of an area. But $1,100 a month times 12 gives you $13,200 for the year in gross rental income. Now that sounds phenomenal, right? Ooh, yeah, especially when you got no mortgage. There's no loan on this property. Let's talk about why. Like the BRRRR strategy that everyone listens to, tries to employ when they're building their rental portfolio is they buy it, they rehab it, they refinance it, and then they repeat. Well, I will tell you, this property, I don't even know if it ever was valued at more than 50 or 60,000. I mean, maybe at one point it might have been 60,000, but no, I doubt it. It's not. No, I'm thinking back in time here. Never it was, because I bought it right after the crash. Values didn't go up, they went down. So when you're dealing with a lender, conventional, regular broker, going to your bank to get financing, whether it's purchase or refinance, they have something that they call the high cost rule, which means a loan of $50,000 or less, and they all have their own kind of caps built in. Some of them might go as low as 40. As a matter of fact, I heard at one point Bank of America could go as low as 35,000, but who knows, whatever. Typically, they don't go under 50,000. Some of them don't go under 60,000 because it costs them the same amount of money to process that loan and get you that money, whether it be a $50,000 or $60,000 loan versus a $100,000 loan. And they don't get paid as much on a $50,000 loan. They don't get that. They don't make that type of income, so they're actually going to lose money. So they call it the high cost rule, or typically you can't get financing under 50K. Is it impossible? Absolutely not. There are programs out there. It's just not easy to find them, and most conventional mortgage broker, mortgage companies, U.S. banks, or whatever banks around here in our areas, mom and pop community bank, maybe. Small community bank, sure. That might be an option through them. But, if you're going to be walking in the door at Chase, it ain't happening. So, high cost rule, we covered that, I'm glad. So, typically these are cash properties. And you can still build a sizable portfolio when you're making $1,100 a month off of in my case, a $32,000 investment, depending on how you handle your funds and how you reinvest it and what the real net income is. As a matter of fact, I think that this property, if I could do it all over again, I probably would. But I want to hear what you have to say about it. So please, once we conclude this podcast, I want to hear your opinion. We get a lot of great questions and some great feedback via email and through the reviews that are going on Stitcher and iTunes. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who's given a review. Please hop on there and give me some more. I think I only have a handful. They have to get a certain minimum before they even show like 2 or 3 on iTunes or Stitcher. Like they don't just post them all, from my understanding. And I want some more. But so far, we're rocking it 5 stars. Love it. So let's run some numbers. We're $13,200 in gross income. Well, is it that simple? No, we all know it's not that simple. There's property management costs. There's capital expenditure, which I kind of already labeled out that I spent $20,000 up front on this place. Roof and all the mechanicals were replaced. So a lot of the capital stuff was handled. It was a brick house. Windows were replaced. So not so much capital expenditure going on there, to be honest. If the sewer line went out, then maybe, but it didn't, luckily. So we're going to take off for maintenance. We're going to take off for vacancy. We're going to take off for the cost of property management. In these types of areas, it's management intensive, as I said earlier. So you're going to need a solid property manager, and in order to make them solid, you're going to have to pay them well. Some property managers are as low as 6 or 7%. If you're going to be operating in the ghetto, plan on higher. Plan on 9, plan on 10, maybe even more. I'm not sure because I don't really buy in the ghetto. That said, so if you take off 10% for maintenance, 10% for vacancy, a year, of course, is all annually, and 10% for property management, which we're going to say is the going rate for that area, which is actually what I was paying, that adds up to a total of $3,960, which is basically 30% of your gross income that is going out the door towards maintenance, vacancy, and property management. I think that's pretty fair. Anyone has a bark at me about it, please do. I want to hear it, but I think that's pretty fair. That leaves a remainder of $9,240 in, we'll call it net income that has come in, not including taxes. Let's talk a little bit about Illinois, because I tell you what, the taxes on this $12,000 purchase with $20,000 into it, so probably a house worth $30,000 tops, were $4,000 per year. Whoa! A lot of you are going to fall over in your chair or run off the road and hit a tree right now. Please don't, by the way. Pay attention. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous where I'm at on what the cost of real estate taxes are. It is totally ridiculous. So, after the cost of $4,000 a year in taxes, which I averaged out, by the way, because there was a point where they were like $3,300. There was a point where they were at like $4,300, but I fought those taxes actually pretty consistently. They were probably more like $3,600 a year, but I'm going to give us the benefit of the doubt that I'm wrong about a lot of shit. So it's $4,000 a year. That leaves us with $5,240 per month. I'm sorry, per month, I wish. Per year in income on that property. Well, that on the surface sounds actually pretty good. That's $436 in net cash flow per month after you've got your maintenance, your property management, and your vacancy included in there, and your taxes paid. And again, no loan. So $436 sounds great. Well, let's talk a little bit more about owning property in a D area. I never collected a full, consistent 1 month's rent paid in full at $1,100 probably for the entire duration of the ownership of this property, more than half the year. So let me rephrase that. The lease said $1,100 a month. I wasn't always getting the full $1,100. But when you're operating this type of an area, I mean, sometimes you got to cut your losses. Maybe I was a little too high priced. Maybe I should have been pricing at $900 or $950. Who knows? Because it seemed like about half the time that's what I was getting, about $900, maybe one month $800, and the next month $1,000. It was pretty consistently 50%, half the year not paid in full, but almost in full. So I took it and I said, okay, well, I got $950 this month instead of $1,100. Had a couple turnovers in the property, and all the tenants kind of did the same thing. So whether they talked to the neighbor, and the neighbor was like, oh yeah, just give that guy less half time of the year, whatever, and they did it, I don't know, but I'm guessing it's just the demographic and the class of the neighborhood. This is something you need to anticipate if you're going to invest in these sub $30,000 properties. Just the way it is, in my opinion. I ain't saying you can't collect full rent. I'm not saying it's impossible at all. I'm sure it is. I'm just saying for a hands-off, turnkey situation where I basically had no involvement in this property other than collecting my check every month, that's what was going on, is they shorted me fairly consistently about half the time, roughly $100 to $200 a month. So we're going to knock $1,200 off our annual income just for that reason. So that gives us about 6 months of shorting me $200 a month during that ownership. That leaves, so I'm just basically throwing $1,200 out the door right now. That leaves $4,040 per year in annual income net after all those expenses and after the fact I got shorted $200 6 months of every year. Now, monthly cash flow net now is $337 per month. Still not the worst thing in the world. Maybe not ideal, but not terrible. Hey, it's a $30,000 house. I'm making $300 a month off of it. They paid their own utilities, which is awesome. I didn't have to pay for any of that. And let's be real, some of these tenants actually kept decent care of the place. I never once I don't know if I said this already because this is the second time I'm doing this podcast, but I never once, my little recorder crapped out of me, never once refinished the hardwood floors after I did the first time. I never replaced the roof. I never had any type of major maintenance issues after I did the initial repairs, which to me is a win because sometimes with these properties, people walk in there when the tenant's not there for a couple of days and they, walk out of there with the furnace. That said, this was that type of a neighborhood. When I was rehabbing the property, and I apologize for digressing, but there's true stories. When I was rehabbing the property, I had to get a live-in property babysitter to occupy the house for free, just so no one would break into it and steal all the copper. So again, keep that stuff in mind. As a matter of fact, we just had somebody that came out for the meetup that was investing in a not so nice area of the city of Chicago, and they talked about how they've had to replace, I shouldn't laugh, I'm sorry. They've had to replace the copper in their, I think it was a 2-flat that they were working on like 3 separate times. But they even said they had a guard dog, and I don't even know. So shit can get crazy. Just be aware of that. Be prepared. And what's lucky for you is with a simple Craigslist ad, you can get someone and live in your house for free. Hopefully you can get them out when you're done working on the property. The caveat being they're going to have a mattress on the floor and maybe a small TV and a microwave and hopefully running water. Just all, probably some of you are laughing right now, but honest to God's truth. So that's what was going on in this property. That's the type of neighborhood I was in. I did not go down there and, trim the trees or plant flowers in the spring because that was probably not somewhere I should be. So $337 a month in net cash flow at this point. So now let's run some numbers on what that totals out to over the course of 9 years. Let's see if I actually made some money. Let's see if this is actually worth doing. And maybe you tell me what you think after we finish this podcast. That amount of $4,040, which is what the net income is for the year, over the course of 9 years, which again, I think I was pretty good about knocking off a lot of expenses and things these are real numbers. That adds up to a total net proceed over 9 years of $36,360. Okay? And what did I tell you I bought it for? $12,000. Put 20 into it. So that's a $32,000 investment. Over the course of 9 years, I got $36,360 back on that property. Not bad. Kind of a wash-ish, like if we're talking about return on your investment. Now, one thing we're not including, we're looking at the whole deal at this point, is I sold the property. I just sold it last week after 9 years of ownership. I sold the property for $17,000 cash, actually to an owner-occupant who paid cash, which is awesome. And there was a home sale contingency built into the contract. So this lady was selling one house for, $20,000 and bought my house for $17,000. Awesome, whatever works. Cash contract, contingent on a house sale. I said, I'll roll the dice. Not the greatest area, right? I didn't, getting a solid buyer in there. The funny thing about this one is I tried to give this house away to some of the investors that were coming to the meetup and I associate with, or any newbie. Like I brought it up at a meeting. I'm like, hey man, I'll sell or finance this thing if somebody's interested. Sorry, I took a quick break there. You guys didn't even know it, but so I was willing to, not give it away, but I probably would have if somebody was really going to try to convince me. Just because once I was done with this property, it at the lifespan it's at right now, I know it was 9 years. It ended up, even though I replaced the roof, for whatever reason, there's some curling shingles on it. I looked at it. Maybe the contractor screwed me on the front end, whatever. But the roof, to me, looks like it needs work or needs replacement again. The kitchen need to be updated again after 9 years. The bathroom need to be updated again after 9 years. I didn't feel like pumping another $20,000 in this property. So I was willing to give it to an investor on a seller finance deal, land contract, whatever, for a couple $100 a month with a couple grand down. Didn't have any takers. So, boom, put it on the MLS, sold it. So I sold it for $17,000 after my closing costs, which includes that $4,000 in taxes. I had to pay my taxes because in Illinois we pay them in arrears, which means taxes that for 2017 are actually paid in 2018. So I owned the property for full 10 months of 2017, which means I basically had to fork up a whole year of taxes at the closing towards that next buyer, plus a little bit more. So approximately, and I'm not including commission, but I did have to pay commission to sell it because I put it on the MLS. So I paid $1,000 to the broker just to sell it. My check that I'm getting from the title company, hopefully today, I'm waiting for it. It's been coming over FedEx for 3 days. I don't know what that's about, but is going to be for $10,000. Roughly. It's $10,280. So let's take my total income over the course of that 9 years. Let's add that to it. So that was $36,360, which was $337 a month in net income, plus $10,000 in proceeds from the sale. Again, we're looking at the whole deal here. That totals $46,360. I paid $32,000 for it with my rehab. That is a return of 144% over the course of 9 years. I know it sounds like a great number. It'd be great if that was in 12 months, but it's not. It's over the course of 9 years. So I divide that by 9, 16%. It's not the worst thing in the world. 16% annualized return, I'll take that. So it actually, to me, worked out okay. Didn't make me rich, didn't do anything special for me. It was an interesting experience. I'd like to hear your opinion on whether this was a ghetto deal or a no deal. So if you're interested in talking to me more about it, reach out to me via email, joe@tanisgroupllc.com, please. joe@tanisgroupllc.com, TANIS Group LLC.com, with a Joe at in front of it. And I'd love to hear more about what your opinion of this is, because this is something that, it's just a debated topic. Maybe we should bring it up at a meetup and discuss it. I don't know. Maybe I should do another episode about classifying neighborhoods, helping investors decide where they should be investing. Because let's be honest, if you can buy it with a credit card, it sounds more appealing. If you can take a cash advance on 2 Visa credit cards and buy a house and pay for the rehab, it kind of gets me excited, But is that always the best move? Maybe, maybe not. Luckily for me, I had the same property manager for the entire course of the ownership, 9 years, and he did a pretty good job. I paid him, in my opinion, pretty well. considering I am a property manager, but I won't manage down in this particular area based on how it is in the class of the neighborhood. But that said, 16% annualized return over year, 144% for the total investment. So invested $32,000, got $46,000 back. Not bad, right? Just took 9 years to do it. You tell me if that works for you. Thanks again for listening to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. This is episode number 66. I'll see you soon. One more thing. November 14th, you heard about it on the last episode, number 65. November 14th, the Investor Empowerment Series meetup, which is kind of tied to the podcast. We want you here if you can make it. Visit www.investor-empowerment-chicago.com to RSVP or to get more information. November 14th, 6:30 p.m., $10 at the door, pizza, refreshments served, talking about creating financial efficiencies in your real estate business.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. Be sure to tune in next week for another empowering episode. We welcome your feedback, so please rate us on iTunes and Stitcher, and visit us at www.investorempowermentchicago.com or tannisgrouprealty.com.